Hey there, ready to challenge a few status quo narratives today? Capitalism's biggest slogan is, of course, freedom. But if we look under the hood, we see that from the very beginning, that freedom has been fueled by one thing: ownership. Welcome to the Financial Historian. Here, money, power, and history collide, and nothing is ever as simple as it looks. We're taught that capitalism liberated humanity from feudal chains and replaced inherited privilege with merit. To be fair, compared to the rigid hierarchy of the Middle Ages, there's truth to that. Markets expanded opportunity, trade loosened social structures, and wealth became more fluid. But here's the uncomfortable question. When capitalism was born, who was actually free? 1. On the shoulders of giants, empires, and monopolies. Let's rewind to the 16th and 17th centuries, the dawn of modern capitalism. There were no visionary entrepreneurs coding in garages back then. Instead, we had empires, charter companies, and the smell of gunpowder. 1600. The British East India Company received its royal charter from Queen Elizabeth I. 1602. The Dutch East India Company, VOC, was formed. These were your neighborhood grocery stores. They were semi-state, entities with state backing, monopoly rights, and even the power to wage war, sign treaties, and build colonies. In other words, the first great capitalist enterprises didn't thrive in a free market. They thrived under the wing of the state. If you were an investor in Amsterdam, you could get rich from spice routes without ever leaving your house. But if you were a local trader in Asia, the freedom of these companies looked a lot like the barrel of cannon. 2. Fencing off the earth, the end of the commons. Let's move from the seas to the soil. Between the 16th and 18th centuries in England, the Enclosure Movement took place. For centuries, rural communities had access to commons, shared fields used for grazing and farming. This allowed families to survive independently. Then came the fences. Through legal acts, these lands were privatized and consolidated. This is a crucial turning point. Capitalism didn't just free labor. It created a labor market by removing the alternatives. When you lose the land that feeds you, your only freedom left is the freedom to sell your labor to someone else just to survive. 3. Factory smoke and the power of capital. By the Industrial Revolution, the picture became crystal clear. Production exploded and technology soared. But if you walked into a Manchester factory in 1830 and asked, "Who is free here?" the answer would be stark. The owner had the freedom to invest, expand, and manage profits. The worker had the freedom to work 14 hours a day or face starvation. The math is simple. Capital compounds while wages are consumed. A factory owner benefits from every spike in efficiency, while a worker's income is tied to their hours and bargaining power. Titans like Rockefeller or Carnegie didn't just work harder. They owned the infrastructure of the world, the oil, the steel, the rails. The bottom line: look past the slogans. Capitalism was an evolution because it dismantled hereditary titles and allowed for innovation. It gave people a chance to rise. But it also shifted power from bloodlines to capital. If you want to navigate the financial world intelligently, you have to stop arguing about slogans and start asking structural questions. Who owns the assets? Who writes the rules? Who takes the risk? And who captures the upside? History whispers a clear lesson. Freedom in a market doesn't exist in a vacuum. It is shaped by ownership and law. To be truly free in this system, simply working isn't enough. You must understand the nature of leverage and assets. Did this perspective shift how you look at your portfolio? I can dive deeper into how modern banking specifically flipped the script on ownership if you'd like. Shall we explore the history of central banking next? For Cold War to the present, Markets as moral identity. After World War II, the world split. Capitalism became more than an economic system. It became the banner of the free world. Economists like Milton Friedman argued that economic freedom was the prerequisite for political freedom. However, after the 1970s, things shifted toward financial capitalism. Wealth creation moved from the factory floor to the stock market and real estate. Asset owners saw their net worth skyrocket as stock and property prices climbed. Wage earners saw their paycheck struggle to keep pace with productivity and inflation. 5. Crises and the invisible hands helpers. Think about the 2008 crisis or the recent pandemic. When the system teetered on the edge, the free market rules were tossed aside. Governments and central banks stepped in with trillions of dollars. If you owned assets, this flood of liquidity made you wealthier. But if you were living paycheck to paycheck, that same liquidity often manifested as inflation, making your freedom feel more like a struggle to afford the basics.